Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. As always, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Turning over the rocks. That's the focus of tonight's angle. When President Trump tasked a willing Elon Musk with making the government more efficient again, it was clear that this exercise wouldn't just be performative, where they review a few programs, make a few cuts, and then just declare victory. No. This time, they were serious. And what better place to start than the ongoing foreign slush fund known as USAID?
In shutting down, which we're in the process of doing, shutting down USAID, the reason for that, as opposed to simply, trying to do some minor house cleaning, is that as we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms.
Yummy, a bowl of worms. And once they started turning over the rocks there, more worms crawled out. USAID should have been disbanded years ago. Now, the agency's top recipient of taxpayer dollars, that has been plagued by allegations of massive waste, fraud, and abuse for decades. And these agencies that benefited rushed to settle with the DOJ after Trump was elected. The largest for-profit contractor for USAID agreed to pay the U.S. government $3.1 million, and that was related to fraudulent billing by a Nigerian subcontractor for a global health supply chain project. And now with the USAID offices at least temporarily shut, with all the dead weight laid off, just imagine how deep this rot goes. Now, the Biden years were just an excuse to spread money around to radicals here, there, and everywhere. In 2023, USAID sponsored scores of DEI events here and abroad, including my personal favorite. I just Googled this and found it today. One was called Celebrating Women in Waste Management, with panels including USAID staff with these titles: Senior Gender Advisor for Environment and Climate, Social and Behavior Change and Gender Director, and Gender Specialist. Well, you get the idea. This is why it's so critical that DOJ scour every inch of our government, every line of the Federal Register, every penny that goes out the door. Remember, it's your money. You earned it. Don't let anyone else waste it. And also that DOJ notifies the president when staff and spending is unnecessary, when it's duplicative, when it's fraudulent, even destructive. And of course, when it's not specifically required by law, then just eliminate it. Yeah, and that will inevitably mean entire agencies are zeroed out. Please zero them out. And with the runaway agendas, the spending of USAID, it's long past time to close down all of it. Congressional oversight? It already found millions of USAID funds going to administrative costs alone.
We got all kinds of threats from USAID because I was trying to exercise my oversight capacity in Congress. My staff and I had estimated was that 30 to 40% of the USAID's awards would go to indirect costs. So their overhead, their rents, employees, things like that.
Ooh, what are they living in, the Taj Mahal?
But for decades, both the left and some checked out Republicans let the agency basically just have its way, with little to no one looking over their shoulders. And during the Biden and Obama years, the gender, the climate, the race activists, they just went to town.
They went totally crazy what they were doing, and the money they were giving to people that shouldn't be getting it, and to agencies and others that shouldn't be getting it. It was a shame. So they're tremendous fraud.
And as anyone who's spent time on a farm knows, when you fill the pig trough every day and you fill it with better and better food, well, the animals, they expect that food no matter what. And when they don't get their food, especially at the required time, they start squealing.
We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power That is how dictators are made.
I don't know what Elon Musk's motivations are. I don't know what his purposes are, but they've got nothing to do with what has been lawfully adopted by the people of the United States of America through the Congress of the United States. We're going to defend USAID all the way.
Well, first of all, USAID was actually created in 1961 by JFK via executive order. And that was after he signed the Foreign Assistance Act into law. And as the chief executive of our government, Donald J. Trump has the responsibility to safeguard our economic well-being, which is now being jeopardized by these types of fraudulent programs. And they're all across the government, by the way. This is just literally scratching the surface. Of course, actually cutting the fat out of government, well, that might as well be a war crime, according to the press.
You want to authorize purging of State Department personnel? What does that mean exactly?
Well, if you want to take a look at the State Department, where DEI has been a priority over, let's say, diplomacy in many accounts, I could give you hundreds of examples of where they were authorizing.
What proof do you have of that?
Sure, let's list them off. $500,000 to expand atheism in Nepal, $50,000 to do, let's see, a transgender opera in Colombia, $47,000 to do an LGBTQ trans comic book in Peru, $20,000 a pop to do drag shows in Ecuador. Shall I continue with more examples of where DEI was the priority?
It certainly seems like there could be a review of things.
You think, Margaret? Well, of course, Democrats, who are in desperate need of a new boogeyman, are trying to shift blame here. So the bad guys to them aren't the ones robbing the U.S. taxpayers by rewarding their buddies with sweetheart deals in far-flung places. No, the bad guy is the person reviewing the programs for fraud and abuse. That's Elon Musk.
Elon Musk may get to be dictator of Tesla, but he doesn't, and he may try to play dictator here in Washington, D.C., but he doesn't get to shut down the Agency for International Development.
Well, that will be for a judge to decide ultimately, Senator, and I imagine on appeal, at the very least, the Trump administration will prevail, including at the Supreme Court.
If it turns out we really need such an organization in the future, we just create it. Problem solved. By the people, answerable and answerable to the people and to the people's elected representatives. That is the way that government is supposed to work.
Yes, it is time for the government to be returned to the people. You are the stewards of the people's money. And it's not the personal piggy bank of government employees who think they answer to no one.
USAID is not an independent, non-governmental entity. It is an entity that spends taxpayer dollars, and it needs to spend it, as the statute says, in alignment with the policy directives that they get from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, and the President. And it's been 20 or 30 years where people have tried to reform it, and it refuses to reform. It refuses to cooperate. When we were in Congress, we couldn't even get answers to basic questions about programs. That will not continue. That's not going to continue.
Well, it can't continue. But President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, and Secretary Bessent, and Elon Musk, they all know that regardless of what your priorities are, regardless of what you want the government to do for you or for some, other foreign country, right now America is on a collision course with a dangerous economic reality. And they know that bold, unconventional, and sometimes very painful measures are going to be needed to avoid the icebergs ahead. So all those guys, the Trump administration, they're going to be sued, they'll be maligned, they'll be threatened, they're called dictators, but they're not going to waver. Keep turning over the rocks and clearing the path to common sense, and the people will follow. And that's The Angle.